19th of August, Rabbi Furst, Pirkei Avos. Now it is.
Oh, thank you. Okay, good morning. This is Rabbi Shlomo Furst, Yeshiva Samanavshi, Yerushalayim Kiravdum. This is our Shabbos Parsha, Eikev, Shana Shemitah, Tovshin Pei Beis. We are learning Chumash, Parsha Hashavua, Parsha Eikev. If you'd like to direct your attention to Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Gimel.
Perek Yud Aleph. It is.
Yeah, these are psukim we're very familiar with.
Did you say Yud Gimel?
Yud Gimel, right? Pasuk Yud Gimel. Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Gimel.
Okay. Oh yes.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone like to do some reading? Okay. Well, we'll look at the psukim, then we're going to focus on one or two rabbis to begin with.
I think it'd be better if you read, Roy, if you don't mind.
Okay. Hashem im shema tishma'u el misvosei asher anochi masavet esachem hayom la'ava es ad Hashem Eloheichem ula'avdo v'chol levavachem v'chol nafshechem.
Okay, very good.
14.
Yeah, let's stop for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it says here, this is the second parsha that we read in Kriya Shema. If you're familiar with that, in the Targum it says here that based on the pasuk says here also a repetition of what was in the first parsha Kriya Shema, that we have a mitzvah to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, la'ava es Hashem Elokeichem, right? To love Hashem your God. Right, and we've mentioned this many times, but I'd like to just reinforce this point. If you look at the Targum, we have it there. The Targum says that the Targum of the word Ava, the Mirachem, Lemirachem, Hayas Hashem Elokechem. Yes, have compassion, Mirachem. The Targum consistently, I've never found a time where it didn't. Consistently, the Targum Unkenis, whenever the word Ava shows up in Chumash, it's always translated into the Targum with a shurish of the word Rachim, Resh Ches Mem, right? And the question is, we can ask here, so the Targum is explaining to us that when we say Ava, that the Torah is commanding us to have Ava, it's not in an emotion. We've been tainted, unfortunately, by the gullus that we're in. That the rest of the world looks at the concept of Ava as an emotion, right? But it's not an emotion at all. According to the Torah, the concept of Ava is something which is and requires action. It's a behavior. It's a behavior. Compassion, right? Compassion is not a emotion. Compassion is a behavior. Correct, Roy? I think that's.
I never thought of it. I never thought of it.
A person's compassionate. He's not talking about his emotions, right? Talking about their behavior. He's a compassionate person. And oppositely, a person is cruel, right? Compassion is the opposite. What is the opposite? The opposite of compassion, cruelty.
I suppose so. But to be compassionate, you have to know what to do, and you know what to do by feeling.
Well, I mean, your behavior is based upon your feelings, and your feelings are based upon your deus, your
knowledge.
Thoughts. your
Thoughts.
knowledge, your thoughts, your knowledge, right? So that it's a whole hierarchy of what and who you are that you have. You have for example, a person has been he's taught that compassion is a value. To be compassionate is a value, right? So because he has that knowledge, right, that instills in him a a mindset of wanting and to do um, uh, kind acts. And he has a feeling, therefore, that he creates feelings within himself that he's motivated to do the acts of kindness, and then it finally expresses itself in behavior, right? In behavior. That, so just I've told this, I've mentioned that before. I'm not sure if it's a. I don't really think it's a true story, but it's just like a muscle to bear out the point that there was once a fellow. He is there back there in Europe, in the old country, back there in Europe, at the Polish woods, and in a little village. So he was a worker. He would go and work in the fields and such, right? Go in the fields and such, and he would make a little parnasa doing that. So one day he got into an accident. When he lost one of his fingers. Lost one of his fingers. So now he didn't have the use of his hand, right? So that put him on the unemployment line. He couldn't do the work in the fields anymore because he was lacking one of his fingers. It was awkward. He wasn't able to adjust. Couldn't do the work. So he had to go around and had to collect money. He was on the poverty. He would go around to the Beit Knesset and other people. He would ask for money. Say he injured himself, and he has no more panasa, and he has to beg for his livelihood. So that went on, and he noticed after a while that he was actually making more money by begging than he was working in the fields. How do you like that?
I think that's not uncommon.
A lot of people. Someone was just telling me that the work ethic in America has been destroyed because now they're giving so many benefits, right? That people they can get almost. He was telling me you can get almost $60,000 worth of yearly benefits from the government if you qualify. So, if a person's going to work, he's going to make $70,000-$80,000 a year. With the taxes, he's going to wind up less than $60,000. So it pays for him to not work and get all the benefits and not have to pay taxes. So they simply killed the work ethic in America. Right. So I know people. They've told me it's hard. It's very hard to find people to hire to do work, right? Unless you pay them quite a lot of money, which is not really fit for the amount of work that they're actually doing and their qualifications also. So anyway, that's the Americans' problem. They have to take care of themselves. But getting back to our story, so you had this now getting wealthier beggar. He's now an official beggar, and he's getting wealthier, right? So lo and behold, he had a child. And he said to himself. I don't think this really happened. I think it's just a story. Emotionally, he said to himself, he's making such a good parnasa doing this. It's chaval that his newborn son should be healthy. So he told the moyel that was coming to do the bris, after you finish with the bris, listen, cut off one of his fingers from his hand, right? Cut off one of his fingers from his hands, and he'll also be able to beg for his livelihood. I'll make a good parnasa, make a good livelihood for begging. So he did it, and his second son comes along, and he said to do the same thing. And so he's very proud of himself. He's getting himself into a generations of professional beggars, and they're going to do very well for themselves. And lo and behold, one time he was away, and his wife gave birth to his third son, and he was away. And he couldn't be there for the bris. So a few weeks later, after the bris, he comes home and he sees his newborn baby. right? And he is looking over the baby. He looks, he says, "Oi, he has 10 fingers. He has 10 fingers. What's going to be with him? How's he ever going to make a living?"
Right. Okay.
So you see how the way a person thinks affects his behavior, right?
Right.
Affects his behavior, the way a person thinks. That's why the Rambam he calls, when he deals with midos, those are the personality traits that a person has. He calls them deus. There's the person's you want to say his philosophies, whatever you want to call them, his viewpoints, his hashkafas, because that's what really makes the person. And what you teach the children is very important. All the regimes, Russian regime, when they took over communist China, what they did when they took over, they immediately seized hold of the educational system, because they understood if they would indoctrinate the children when they were young, they would have the children already primed and ready, and they wouldn't have any resistance from the new generation, right? Because they'd already been indoctrinated at a very young age into believing. That's what the communists in Russia, what they first of all, they said all the children have to go to a communist school. There's no more private schools, no more religious schools. All that's done and over. That's history. All the children have to go and attend the communist schools. Fine. Number one. Number two, they have to come, and they're not supposed to bring food from home. We're going to feed them. We're going to feed them very good. We're going to feed them very good. You don't have to bring any food from home. Even the parents were happy about that, right? Oh, I don't have to send the child with food. The school's going to pay for it. You see, the state's such a wonderful thing. They're going to actually, pay for the child. They're going to give the children free breakfast and lunch, right? Even the parents were happy about that. So number three, when the children got to school, so okay, they get there 7:30, 8 o'clock, wherever the day's time starts, right? And they're learning whatever they're teaching them. And it comes time for breakfast time, and there's no food yet, and they're getting hungrier and hungrier. And now it's getting to be like 10 o'clock in the morning, and they haven't had breakfast really, maybe just a cup of tea or something, like they sent them off with that. And they're getting kind of really pretty, hungry and thirsty, the kids. So the teacher would say, "Oh, it's 10 o'clock. It's time for our breakfast break." So the teacher would say, "Okay, now I want you all to pray to your gods. Each one of you, whoever you happen to be, you pray to your gods, and they should bring you food, right? You have no food, and you're supposed to pray to your gods to bring you food." So of course, all the children, the mimes, as they were, they start praying for their food, for each one in their own way, to their own God. Deal. And of course, there would be no food coming. There would be no food coming, and they'd be, screaming and crying, and "Help me, bring me food, help me, bring me food," and and they're getting frantic after all. They're getting very hungry. So after about 5 or 10 minutes of this frantic crying and screaming and crying, he says, "Okay, now you're gonna pray to Stalin that you should get food. Pray to Stalin you should get food." So they had no other choice. They started praying to Stalin they should get food. And lo and behold, as soon as they did that, the doors opened up. Oatmeal with chocolate cookies on the side, and the teacher told him, "You see, Stalin provides for you. Stalin provides for you," right? So they were indoctrinating the children at a very young age that that's the way it is. And of course, they had their own intentions, that they didn't want resistance from the younger generation. So here, getting back to our point here, compassion is a behavior. It's not an emotion. And that's the way that the Targum Mukdalos, in every instance that I've ever found in Chumash, he always translates Ava as a behavior, not a emotion. So when we have a command to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're supposed to behave towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu with love, as the Targum says, with compassion. Now, what does that mean? That we're going to behave towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu with compassion. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need compassion from us, right? He doesn't even need our mitzvahs. He doesn't need anything from us. Hashem, by definition, is perfect in all ways. He's not lacking anything, right? So it's not shaykh to say that Hashem needs something from us, right? But that's our mitzvah. Our mitzvah is that we have to behave compassionately towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So what does that mean, compassionately towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That there's a phrase that the pasuk uses in relation to Avraham Avinu, that Avraham Avinu was mischased v'koinoi. He was mischased. He was pious. He was pious with his creator. And the Meforshim explained that means that Avraham Avinu, when it came towards a choice, a decision of doing something for himself or doing something for Kadosh Baruch Hu, he always chose doing something for Kadosh Baruch Hu. That how do we act compassionately towards a Kadosh Baruch Hu? By choosing the fulfillment of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's ratzon, his will, rather than our will. Meaning we may want to do this and this and this, but we change and we say we're going to do the will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's how we, through our behavior, are acting with ava, with love and compassion towards a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? So we choose to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu rather than serving ourselves. That's basically the understanding that I have of when it's the mitzvah of loving a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, let's continue on. Next pasuk.
V'nosati mata artzachem v'ito yoreh momokosh v'osavto degonecha v'sirosecha v'yitzorecha. I'll give you the rain of your land in its season, the first rain and the latter rain, that you may gather in thy corn, and thy must, and thine oil.
Good, very good. Let's continue on.
15. V'nosati Eikev. Oh, just a minute. Oh, I got lost. V'nosati Eikev. V'sodecha livhimtecha v'achaltecha v'savotecha. I'll give grass in your fields for beasts, that you may eat and be satisfied.
Very good, right? Very good.
All right. So advocating a meat diet.
Yes. So there's a question that's asked, in particular with reference to this and other psukim similar to it, that we see that the Torah, in general, in most all cases and almost all the time, always gives the reward for the mitzvahs in physical, tangible terms in Olam Hazeh. The Torah directly, I'm not sure 100%, but I don't think there's ever a direct reference to any reward for Torah and mitzvahs in Olam Haba. It's all the time that the Torah mentions about the rewards and also the punishments are physical Olam Hazeh rewards and punishments. right? You never, it could be that when it mentions about chorus, could be about chorus, according to one definition, that it's referring to um, the situation of the neshama in Olam Haba, but in general, and there are other ones that explain about chorus, the punishments associated with parts that they're specifically those things which relate to Olam Hazeh. But that's the general approach of the Torah. Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us the reward and the punishments for the mitzvahs specifically in Olam Hazeh. That's what's mentioned in the Torah. But we know, right, part of our tradition, our Torah Shabbat Peh, the oral Torah, based on the Gemara and Chazal, is that there are many, many more, and in fact, infinite rewards awaiting us, and on the opposite way as well, in terms of spiritual rewards. But the physical exclusively only explains about physical rewards. It does not explain at all, or perhaps only in very few or maybe veiled references to spiritual rewards for the keeping of Torah in the mitzvahs of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And there's a reason for that. That the Torah wants that what it says should be verifiable. You shouldn't have to wait, right? It's a very nice sales pitch. You know that I'll sell you a special potion, right? Special potion. It'll make you healthy, wealthy, and rise, right? You drink this potion, right? It'll make you healthy, wealthy, and rise. It's like, I remember there was a certain fellow that he had a selling a pamphlet, right? So we're selling a pamphlet. Not a pamphlet, we sell it, and it says on there, it says, this pamphlet will make you wiser, right? This pamphlet is going to make you wiser. So $5 for the pamphlet, a little pamphlet, not very much at all, a little thing, $5, $5, it'll make you wiser. So, he'd get it, so one fellow looked at it, his pamphlet's going to make you wiser. So he put down his $5, bought the pamphlet, and took it home, and he found it was filled with a lot of nonsense, a lot of nonsense. So in fact, to the person who sold it to him, he says, "What is this? What is this you're selling me? You say this pamphlet says it's going to make me wiser. So it's a bunch of nonsense in it." He says, "This person who sells it, so I'm telling you, next time before you buy something, look at it first. Now
Right.
you're wiser. Now you're wiser."
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So it's the same sort of thing. Like, let's say I have a potion that's I'm gonna sell you this potion that's gonna make you healthy, wealthy, and wise. Wonderful things, right? Everyone wants to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, right? It's gonna make you wonderful things. The only thing is, right, you're not gonna find out about it until after Me'av Esrim Shana, right? That's not very promising product, right? So
Rabbi, can I go back just a second?
Yeah.
To what you were saying before about the reward in Olam Haba, the eternal reward.
Right.
So I have a difficulty understanding this concept of reward and punishment in Olam Haba. My understanding of reward and punishment, I mean, if a father rewards and punishes his son, so he's doing it in order to teach his son, in order for his son to improve. He punishes him for bad behavior so that he won't do the bad behavior. He rewards him for good behavior to encourage him to do more good behavior. So how does that work with Olam Haba? Olam Haba, you're fixed. It's fixed. Nothing's going to change. So
Right.
what's the point of giving you a reward in Olam Haba?
So it's really we many times we use this phrase reward and punishment in terms of Olam Haba, but it's really not that exactly at all. The Ramban has in many of his many svarim, he has a certain shar called shar hagamul. Shar hagamul is exactly this. He goes into the various different consequences which arise from a person's actions in this world. And that's what really Gemul means. Gemul means consequences, meaning we can loosely explain what's happening in Olam Haba as reward and punishment, but really what's happening, it really means consequences. Meaning in the next world, you have to live with the consequences of what you caused here in this world. Sometimes they'll be perceived as rewards, and sometimes they'll be perceived as punishments, but really what they are simply consequences of what you accomplished from your deeds, all your thoughts, your speech, and your behavior is a consequence. Olam Haba is a consequence of what you accomplished here. So it's really a consequence. But people in general speak about it as being rewards and punishments because that's how it's perceived. The consequences of good acts are perceived as rewards, and the consequences of bad acts are perceived as punishments. But really, it's consequences.
So when the Rambam says that one of the 13 principles is that we need to believe in reward and punishment, is that mamish reward and punishment in this world and not in the world to come, or is it cause and effect, like you say, consequences in this world also?
It's definitely there are definitely specific rewards and punishments in this world. That's what this pasuk was saying, right? It says, right? It says here, that's what we're learning now. It says that v'yishamu pen yifteh levavchem v'sartem v'adatem elim achirim v'yishtakevisem v'chara af Hashem bechem v'atza es hashamayim v'lo yeh matar. If you're going to go ahead and be straying after false idols, then Hashem is going to be very upset at you, and He's going to stop the rains from coming, and all these other things that we'll be getting to, all these things will be happening. And again, it's not simply punishments. A punishment is Hashem's not interested in taking out His vengeance upon us. The punishments are really for our own good, because if what would be the case if we would not obey HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything else physically would continue on to be just fine, right? We wouldn't come to our senses that we're doing something wrong, right? Hashem wants us to come to our senses and realize we're doing something wrong, and therefore the rains will stop coming, right? The land won't bring its produce. All these things which we desire and want and we need very much so, right? These things are necessary for our continued proper life in this world. And if we are denied these things, life becomes very difficult, right? So nobody wants life to become difficult. So it's important that these things occur. And again, even in this world, there are more consequences than anything else. Even if you have based in, for example, a person steals, so he has to pay the thing back. If he does certain crimes, he has to get lashes. If he does things, he has to get Mrs. based in. These things, in addition to being not simply punishments, you could ask the question. Ask your question instead of asking the question, Olam Haba, what about Mrs. Bastin? Right? A person is going to be killed by Bastin. Right, so he's not going to be changing, right? He's going to be out of this world soon, right? Right. So what the punishment is achieving, as we learned this in the Sefer Nefesh HaChaim. The punishment, what we call a punishment, is not simply a punishment, but it's also what we call a tikkun. It's rectification. There was a certain crime that was done. And in order to rectify that crime that was done, right, we need to have this particular punishment, whether it's lashes or it's a money payment or whether it's Mrs. Basement. These things have to occur in terms for the rectification of the crime to be made, which is really the ultimate benefit for the person, right? If that's why we have the advantage of having Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur gives us an advantage that we don't have to wait for all these things to happen to us, that we have an advantage and the benefit of Yom Kippur, that we can do tshuva on Yom Kippur and eliminate the necessity of many of these things actually happening. Right? If we take Yom Kippur seriously enough, right?
Right.
So they really are the real proper perspective is that there are consequences, and but they're also in terms of how we understand things. There are punishments and there are rewards, right? So and there are rewards in this world and there are rewards in the next world, and punishments in this world and punishments in the next world.
But punishments and rewards in this world are to help us to improve. Or the next world, there are consequences because there's
there are more consequences. It's much more clearly understood that those are consequences than because as you said, there's no more opportunity to change, right? And also that's like, for example, Mises Bastin. How is Mises Bastin? You get a person's a criminal, he's going to die at the hands of Bastin. So he's not going to have an opportunity to make any real change in his life in this world, because his life in this world is about to be over. So that's going to be a consequence. He needs this rectification, right? He needs this rectification because of his crime. He needs this rectification that the punishment will accomplish.
Right. But we do have the concept that a person can do tshuva on his deathbed.
Definitely, and not only that, a person, even a person's chayiv mises based, and they tell him and they encourage him, and he should do tshuva. And but part of his kapara, he needs besides a slicha, he needs a kapara. The kapara will be accomplished. A person's supposed to pray. A person's supposed to pray that his leaving this world should be a kapara for him. That's part of the process of leaving this world, right? That the part of the process of leaving this world is that the leaving this world is an atonement for a person's actions that he did in this world when he was alive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's continue on with the few more. You have some time yet? Go ahead, Roy, if you like. That was the one that I read. But we'll go right. Right. Okay, right. So he said Vinasati Eikev, right? So that was I was mentioning that all the that Hashem is mentioning to us. These are all physical things in the physical world that Hashem is guaranteeing, promising to us.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now it's Mem Zion, is it? Or was it Mem Vav?
That should be. You can read that. That's actually test. Vav. Start with test Vav again. We'll get a running start. Yeah, go ahead.
Test Vav, right. V'nosati Eikev v'sodacha v'chemtecha v'halta v'savato. And I will give grass in your fields for your beasts, and you may, that's what we did, and thou mayest eat and be satisfied. Right. Yishomeru lachem pen yifteh levavim v'zatem v'vadatem Elohim achayrim v'hishtakavisem lachem. Take heed to yourselves that your heart misled you not, and you turn aside and serve other gods, and prostrate yourself before them.
Right. So that's pretty serious. Right. That's pretty serious crime.
Mhm.
So what's the consequence of that? If so, what's going to happen?
V'chara af ad Hashem, and so Hashem will be very angry. V'chol v'atzi es Hashemayim yeh maton v'hadama lo sitin es yibua v'vadatim Mahera Ma'al Haaretz Atava Asher that Hashem Nosen Lachem. And then the wrath of the Eternal will glow against you, and he will restrain the heaven that there be no rain, and that the ground give not its increase. And you shall perish quickly from off the good land which the Eternal giveth you.
Now, if we can, I'd like to do a couple of the Rashi here on this pasuk. If you design
Okay. That was Pasuk Yud Zion.
But you have it in English. You can read it in English. You can read the Rashi.
Yeah, I've got the Nikodot and
Okay. Oh, very good. Perfect.
if I can find it, just a minute. Yud Zion. Eshavua af ma she'asa ma'avil lo ba'inayan shena ema. And I've got in brackets Chayni Aleph. Anyway, and now it's out of the brackets now. Za'atom, the writing is very, very small. Haraba, Vahacha, Ma'at. And then I've got in brackets Sifrei. Oh, for Sifrei. All right. Then Vahavta Mahera. Alcohol Sha'ar Hayisarin and Allah Esachon Man Ha'adama Shenadma Lecham Lechata. And then Mashal Malacha She'elach Banu Leves Hamashta V'haya Yoshev Umaf Kido Al Tacho Yosef Mitzarachim Mitzarachia Shetovo Levesecha below.
Okay, well, maybe you have the English there.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe just read it. I think because time is short. Let's just read the English. I think from again what it says in Yud Zion 17.
Yes, and I'll give the grass in a field for your cattle. And that's 15, is it? Yud Zion. In a field, so that you will not need to lead them to distant pasture grounds. Another explanation, it means that you'll be able to cut your grain all the rainy season and cast it before the cattle as fodder. And if you withdraw your hand from it, stop doing this, only 30 days before the harvest, it will not give you less of its corn than if you had not fed your cattle with it. That is implied by V'ochalta v'zavata. You will eat to the full, Sifrei. And you shall eat and be satisfied. This is quite another separate blessing. By the way, there are a couple of notes, which I haven't read. But anyway, and it means that a blessing will be on the bread within the stomach. See Rashi for Leviticus 25:19. XXB. V'ochalta v'zavata. All right. And then he goes on to 16.
Yeah, very good. Go ahead.
All right. Shomer lachem, and thou shalt eat and be satisfied. 16. Take heed that your heart misled you not. When you have eaten and are full, take heed to yourselves that you kick not against God. For usually no man rebels against the Holy One, blessed be he, except out of satiety, as it is said in 8:12-14, in chapter 8, Posix 12-14, lest thou eat and art full, ... and thy herds and flocks increase. What is sated after this? And thy heart be lifted. What is stated after this? And thy heart be lifted up, and thou forget that is the Lord thy God. And you turn aside to depart from the Torah, and through this you will serve other gods. For so soon as a man departs from the Torah, he goes and clings to idol worship. Similarly, did David say, 1, for they have driven me out this day, that I should not cleave to the inheritance of the land, that is the Torah, saying, go serve other gods. But who had really said thus to him? But he meant, since I am driven out, so that I can no longer occupy myself with the Torah, I'm nearly exposed to the danger of serving other gods, says Sifrei. Other gods, that is, gods that are alien to those who worship them. So alien to those who worship them.
Right, because those the false gods, they have no real power to help the person, so they make themselves people worship them, but they don't really help them. So they make themselves, that's like they make themselves alien, unknowing about them.
One calls to it, and it does not answer him.
Oh, there you are.
There you are. Consequently, it becomes to him like a stranger. 17.
Yeah.
The ground will not give its yavol, and it will not yield even as much as what you have brought, yavol, to it, even the same quantity of seed you have sown in it, just as it is said in Haggai 1:6. You sow much, but bring in little.
Yes, that's right.
Says Sifrei. Yeah. Says Sifrei. Sorry.
You have to do it. Meaning, in other words, you have to do a lot of work, and you get very little benefit from the work that you put in.
Okay. So Sifrei compares with Rashi in Leviticus 26:20. The health of Avatar Mahera, and you shall perish quickly. In addition to all the other sufferings, I will banish you from the soil which made you sin, says Sifrei. A parable. It may be compared to the case of a king who sent his son to the banqueting hall and earnestly charged him, do not eat more than you need in order that you may come home clean. The son, however, took no notice of this. He ate and drank more than was needed and vomited it up and befouled all the company. They took him by his hands and feet and cast him out of the palace. Mahera, and you shall perish quickly. I will give you no respite. But if you ask, was not respite given to the generation of the flood, as it is said in Genesis 6:3, his days shall be, that is, a respite shall be given for 120 years.
Oh.
Oh,
So you understand the question. Rashi's posing a question here. What if the pasuk says Mehera? He'll be thrust out of the land quickly, right?
mm-hmm. But then if we say, okay, but Hashem didn't Hashem give us some respite after the flood, and by saying his days shall be, that is, a respite shall be given him. His days shall be 120 years.
Right. For the whole 120 years before the Mabul, Noah was given the command by Kadosh Baruch Hu to build a teva, to build the ark. And the question is, why should it be given such a command 120 years before the necessity to use it? I'm sure it didn't take 120 years to build, right? Maybe we'll say it took a few years, something like that, but 120 years probably didn't take that much time to do it. So the reason why Hashem gave 120 years for Noah to build the ark was that people should take out a point and realize and understand what's going on here. Because you have to realize again, Noah was a very famous person. Noah was a tremendously respected and accomplished person. That Noah, as Rashi points out at the end of Parsha's Bereshis, take a look at the Rashi there. Why Noah was called Noah? Because Noah means rest, right?
Sorry, not means what?
Rest, R-E-S-T.
Oh, rest, right.
So why is Noah called rest? Because when Noah was born, and in his life, he was the inventor of, as Rashi describes, the inventor of agricultural tools. Humanity did not have agricultural tools at the time before Noah was born, and he lived. With Noah's coming into the world, he invented agricultural tools, plows, shears, all the other necessities of agriculture, and that put an end to a great amount of time and effort and even suffering on the behalf of humanity. That now they had tools to work with, whereas before they had to use their hands. Try and plow a field with your hands, right? Go ahead. Think it's easy, right? Try and cut and prune trees by ripping off branches with your hands. Not an easy job. You have a saw, you have a pruner, right? Shears, then you'll be able to do the job chick-chack, right? So Noah invented the whole of humanity, and here he was given a command by Kadosh Baruch Hu that he was going to spend the next 120 years building the teva. So people took obviously an interest in this. They were walking by Noah's mansion. Noah must have had a nice mansion and he lived in whatever. He lived in a cave. He had cavemen in those days, right? So he lived in caves, whatever. So he had a Noah's cave. And outside Noah's cave, you see this construction going on day in and day out. Right? For 120 years, people would say, Noah, what you doing? I says, well, God came to me and talked to me and said, there's going to be a flood. I have to build this boat, right, to save myself. So that was an opportunity Hashem was giving the humanity that should be able to do tshuva. For 120 years, he gave them opportunity to do tshuva. So the question Rashi is asking here is why does it say Mehera that Hashem is going to throw us out of the land quickly? Well, he should do it slowly, like he did it with the Dor HaMabul, with the generation of the flood.
Mhm.
So Rashi gives an insightful explanation why that's not the case. Go ahead. What does Rashi say in his answer?
Then I reply, the generation of the flood had no one from whom to learn, but you have someone from whom to learn. Sifro.
The generation of the flood, humanity, they didn't have anything to say. Well, we better improve our ways because Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to. He's true to keep his word. He's gonna do something here, just like he did to them and them and then. No, they didn't have somebody to say they did to them and them and then. For us, we can say, well, look what happened to the Dor HaMabul. Look what happened to Sodom. Look what happened to Egypt. Right? They all were great and powerful in their own rights, in their own ways, and because they were corrupt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took out his wrath upon them and destroyed them. So we have 3 examples, and more, in fact. And we have a Torah and all the examples of Hashem's dealing with people who are not loyal. And so we have those examples to learn from. So we don't need to have 120 years of possible change taking place, because we don't need that. We have the history, and as the Torah describes it, from which we should learn from, and therefore we're obligated to learn from the history and not rely on Hashem's mercy to last so long. So therefore, since we have the obligation to learn from what happened to previous generations, Hashem is not going to be so patient with us as he was with them. So that's something to keep in mind, that Hashem is very, very patient. He's very patient. And we obviously hope and pray that Kadosh Baruch Hu should have, at the same time, make good use of his mercies. Hashem's having merciful with us, that he doesn't have to show him do what happened to the Mabul, the Dor Flugga, Sodom, the Egyptians. So we should make good use of his compassions. And as Hashem, everyone should have a good Shabbos, a good Erev Shabbos, and we'll see you all in Yom Rishon. That's Hashem.
Amen. Lou, have a good Shabbos. Refuah Shalom.
Refuah Shalema, yeah.
And Judy should not be affected by you. All right.
There's no Rabbi Levitt shield.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Beg your pardon?
There's no Rabbi Levitt shield.
How did you know?
It's Alan Ray.
Who?
Alan Ray.
Alan. Oh, apparently flew. Alan rang and said you're on mute. Alan rang and said there's no Rabbi Levitt shield.
Oh, thank you for letting me know.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go back to bed then.
All right. Good idea.
All right. Thank you.
Refuah Shalema.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Have a good Shabbos.
Bye-bye.